One of the things about hunting in Alaska that a lot of hunters don't stop and think about is the mental and physical challenge that you're going to go through. And it all starts with the travel. I'm from the East Coast, so we had a long day's flight just to get to Anchorage.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Capuano and Lance Airlines, we'd like to welcome you to Anchorage.
The funny thing about Alaska is the further you travel, the smaller the craft gets. Nice job. Well, we're finally in King Salmon, so we're just sitting here at the airport waiting for one more flight out to camp. We went from a big jumbo jet down to these little Super Cubs that are, it's just an amazing experience. And it's a little unnerving at first and takes a little getting used to, but as you travel and as you see this country, you really just can't help but get involved in the hunt. As you get here to Cinder River, you see this beautiful lodge and beautiful camp, and we walk in and there's hot cookies on the stove and heat and a shower, and you kind of take a step back and you say, whoa, this is not exactly what I expected. But the bottom line is, you know you're going to be heading out to Spike Camp and get out in this huge wilderness. So it's nice to have at least one night to acclimate a little bit, get yourself a good meal, and really get mentally prepared for the hunt.
In 2010, we purchased Cinder River Lodge. It came with a long, rich history of tremendous brown bear and moose hunting, and it's kind of one of the destinations on the Alaska Peninsula to go and hunt.
So the next morning we got ready to load up the Super Cub, and the Super Cub really is just one of those legendary planes up here in Alaska. It's the smallest of the small.
And having good pilots with the right aircraft just allows us to get to the hunting areas where the bears live.
It's the SUV of the tundra. Now it's headed for remote, pristine, volcanic Aniakchak National Monument and Preserve on the Alaska Peninsula, one of the least visited places on the continent, where for some 6,000 years hunters have pursued giant moose and brown bear, grown huge, gorging on salmon.
So we got to Spike Camp, and it took us 2 loads on the planes to get in there, but when you get there, you see why Lance is such a good outfitter. His style is kind of, let's do it as minimal as we can, but also let's have what we need to be warm at night and have good food. And this worked out perfect. We flew in, camp's 20 yards from the runway, and
we got water right here.
So all these camps that you have to set up and take down every time you use them. You can't leave anything.
Nothing can get left. We're in the national park, so everything flies in, set up camp, everything flies back out once we're done.
Are we gonna head up there in the morning?
We're gonna get up on those rocks where we can see a ton. If it's blowing hard, we ain't crawling up that high. The bears are gonna be looking for fish, so we'll be good.
Find the fish, find the bears.
Kill the bear.
Well, first morning of the bear hunt, I'm just gonna work our way up this ridge this morning where you can see all these salmon streams. So hopefully we can get up high enough and get a good vantage point. Hopefully spot some bears pretty quickly. As we headed out that first morning, we basically trucked through this swamp, and we get to this one area where you could see a huge bear trail.
And it's taken thousands and thousands of years and lots of bears, but you can see where they've stepped in each spot. This is a major travel corridor from the berry patches over to the salmon streams. And so there's lots of places that kind of got bear trails. You got to have a lot of bears and big bears to be making trails like this. So
it kind of gives you that little unnerving feeling, and your hair starts to stand up. It's, we were in real low light, and you start looking around, and you just feel like the bears can be there at any given second.
This is the trail we'll walk every day, and we'll try to stay in the same trail so we don't spread our scent all around. But we'll get up to the glass knob, see what we can find. Each species we hunt has its different, I say it's its go-to scents. When you're hunting sheep, you don't let them see you. When you're hunting goats, you don't let them see you. When you're hunting bears, you don't let them smell you. And I don't mean smell you as you're stalking. You do everything you can so they don't smell you where you've been. I made it real distinct to Dean that we were going to walk the same trail to the same glass knob every day to eliminate where we spread all our scent.
So we get up on that knob the first morning of the hunt, and the plan for the entire week was really just to watch these salmon streams and these gravel bars in hopes that these bears would be out feeding on the salmon. And it's rough country, but hopefully we're up above them now. We can kind of get a vantage point. Look out over all these streams. Hopefully we can spot one. You know, pretty quickly that first morning, the hunt goes from a physical walk, getting here, all the travel, to just a mental game. And now you have to sit up on this knob for hours at a time, picking apart this country, which working for an optics manufacturer, I love to do, but you know, there's a lot of things you're battling here. Not only your patience, but the weather, the wind, the rain, the fact that you've been going hard the last few months. Now you've got to sit in one spot, and you know, kind of that physical to mental transition takes over, and it really becomes a huge challenge. You could tell pretty quick on that first day that the bears weren't really on the streams pretty hard. We could see some salmon in the stream, but just not what we expected. And finally that first afternoon, we saw our first bear, but he was up in the berries. And
I got the scope on him, and he gave me that one good broadside look, and he's got the big long neck swooping down, and then from there, you know, he got the big Oprah butt. I went back in the brush.
You know, the next couple of bears that we saw come out over the next, say, 12 hours, they were all up in the berries, and they were a good 4 or 5 miles away. And, you know, it's great. We have great optics. We could see that, you know, at least one of them was a really good bear. But on the same token, you realize there is a lot of country between him and I. And, you know, I know what it took to just walk in from camp, which was probably a half a mile to a quarter of a mile. Now you're looking at a 4 or 5 mile hike, and that whole aspect of the mental and physical challenge really comes together. You start looking at the terrain, you look at the swamps, you look at the streams, you look at the weather, and all these things that you're gonna have to battle. And actually getting close enough to the bear to make a good shot, it just makes this brown bear hunt one of the most unique and challenging experiences I've ever had.
This hunt this week has been great so far. We got this really nice vantage point where we can see lots of country. In this area through here, there's a lot of salmon in these streams. Even right on this corner, about 300 yards from us, these salmon are just piled in here. So hopefully the bears have kind of switched over from berries to fish just before the long winter. And that's kind of what we're waiting for, one of these big boys to show up and hopefully be hungry for some fish.
Of 3 categories of brown and grizzly recognized by Safari Club International, Alaska browns are the biggest, with skulls up to 30 inches.
When I started doing some research, 5 of the top 20 SCI bears have come out of Cinder River Lodge area. So there's just good quality bears here. We've got a healthy population.
A brown bear is a brown bear around the world, from the mountains of Spain to Yellowstone in Wyoming, even when you call them a grizzly. Here on the peninsula, bears regularly reach well above 1,000 pounds and 10 feet in length. Coastal brown bears eat almost 60,000 calories a day when the salmon are spawning, living a life of luxury compared to the hard-scrabble existence of their cousin, the interior grizzly. Dean Capuano's guide and outfitter, Lance Kronberger, is familiar with the big bears, whether browns or grizzlies.
What do they call these in Alaska? Character days?
This is a disciplinary day.
A disciplinary day. I don't think I've done anything wrong yet, though, have I?
No. We're getting it out of the way before we get started.
We're banking it.
You know, we just need to spend our time where we need to be able to glass lots of area and find the right bear and make it happen.
The good news is we saw some fish in the stream this morning.
There's fish in the stream. So the bears are fat and happy right now, and they're not going to expend a bunch of energy when the weather's tough like this.
Yeah. The next several days were just, you know, it was torture. We started to see less and less bears, and this brown bear hunting is definitely not an easy hunt. You know, that's the thing for me, what hunting is all about. It's kind of that journey. It's, you know, I love the physical hunts, but also those mental challenges that in the beginning of the hunt, sometimes you're not sure that you can overcome. And, you know, as the week goes on, you get better at glassing, you get better at being patient. And that's what I take away from these hunts, the fact that I went into it, you know, really questioning my physical and mental abilities as a hunter, and hopefully come out at the end with a huge trophy to prove it.
I know it's been slow the last couple of days. I know we're talking about maybe moving, but we're going to stick it out here for another day or two. Yeah. I mean, the bears aren't on fish yet, even though there's fish in the rivers.
Do you think the weather's had them slowed up a little bit?
I think there was a good berry crop, and they're still hanging out on berries. So, but let's stick with staying here for a couple days, and then if it's still slow, we'll pack up and move.
What do they say? It's 98% boredom and 2% just sheer terror.
That's right. I mean, it can happen
just like that.
That's right. It can happen.
So it can
fast.
happen like that. In and Lance and I were sitting there talking, and he had mentioned the fact that he's only had 4 or 5 days in his hunting career that he hasn't seen any bear. And, you know, it's one of those things as a hunter, you start to feel like, oh boy, if the outfitter's not seeing bear, we might be in trouble.
In one of the most remote spots in Alaska and the continent, Swarovski Optic Quest's Dean Capuano and veteran bear guide Lance Kronberger have enjoyed peace and tranquility. Too much tranquility because they haven't seen a bear in days in one of the best areas on the peninsula.
It was one of those beautiful bluebird days in Alaska, and you do not get many of them. And you know, we thought for sure the bears would be out, but we had a great day on the hill. It was beautiful weather, and we just didn't see any bears. So
things were slow. You know, it was tough. We had to spend a lot of time just sitting and glassing. You know, and Dean was asking lots of questions, and you know, sometimes there is no answers. We weren't seeing them on the berries, we weren't seeing them on the fish, we just weren't seeing any bears.
You know, as we packed up our bags that night to kind of head down the hill, it's just one of those things, you know, like, oh, it's been 3 or 4 days of this, and my patience is definitely getting tested. We've been here for 3 straight days, and we've seen a few bears off in the distance, but it just, the whole salmon run just hasn't panned out the way we thought. We started to head down the hill that night, and one of the things that Lance and I discussed was this is Alaska after all. So anytime you're out in the field, even when you're off the knob, walking back to camp, you always got to be prepared. You just never know what can happen. And
you know, just when you think that, man, we're going to go a whole day without seeing a bear, as we're walking back to camp, I mean, there he appears. That really dark bear that we saw, he's right there. I don't know how big he is, so we just have to get up there and get a look at him before.
Okay. We couldn't really get a good look at him. The first time that I saw him, I didn't think it was a big bear. And, you know, I don't know if it was the brush he was in or I was just so excited to see a bear, I just couldn't size him up the way I wanted to.
Moving through there, I can just see him.
Just a little bit right through the brush. Yeah. He's got to get out in the open or I can't tell how big he is.
Okay.
He's moving right there. And you got lots of things happening. You got lots of things going through your mind. Not only you're trying to kill the bear, but you're trying to make sure it's the right bear.
Yeah, Lance.
We moved into the brush, and you know, Lance kind of figured out where the bear was going, so he pulled me back. We kind of had to run around the end and hopefully get set up a little bit ahead of the bear, so it would give us just a little bit of time to judge him and make a really good shot.
And when we saw that bear, he's looking right at us. He's not sure what we are. And so that enabled us to, you know, to have the time to go through the checklist of making sure it was the right bear.
All right, I'm on it.
Make sure it's a bear.
All right.
So as soon as that bear stepped out and I got a really good picture of him in the scope, I knew it was a good bear. I just hadn't seen enough of these brown bears to know if it was the bear. You know, and as soon as he turned the one corner and his big forearm came out, I knew that was a big boar. And all I needed to do was just hear Lance say, okay, take him. And
all right, take him.
You know, perfectly broadside for me, and it just, you know, sometimes things just come together in the end.
Good shot. Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's real easy to get down, and when you get down, you miss those opportunities. Everybody had a good spirit, kept their heads up, and we made it happen. He's done. Done.
Awesome.
Way to go, buddy. Way to go.
That happened quick.
Big bear.
Walking up to a giant 10-foot brown bear. It's one of those things you can't help but get a little emotional in the physical and mental challenge of the last few days, but also seeing the size of these animals is just amazing. I'm one of those people that really believes in karma, and you know, we are literally 10 feet away from where you said that first morning that these trails have been worn over 1,000 years.
It was meant to be, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
That's it. And it's amazing. For me, I come all the way from the East Coast, travel all the way to Alaska. We get to Cinder River Lodge, then we've got to fly out even further. It's like you're almost going to the moon. And then after all that, it literally comes down to a few feet one way or the other.
Absolutely, you know. And that's the way bear hunting is. I mean, it can happen so fast, and it's a matter of just a few little details.
As you start to see the size of their paws and the size of their head and the fact that these animals can live out here and just survive, it's just an amazing, amazing animal. Coming up here to Alaska really is a trip of a lifetime. It's one of those things I've told so many people over the years that you really have to come experience this place at least once in a lifetime. And you know, the weather and the scenery and the game and everything that's involved with this great adventure, it's just, you know, I know the term hunt of a lifetime and trip of a lifetime is used so much, but I would think Alaska is a little bit more of a life-changing experience. You look at things a little bit different when you go back home. You know, you don't take things for granted because when you get here, you kind of minimalize everything, and it's just one of those things you definitely go home a different person.